what are my real needs? How can I proactively care for myself in a more deeper and more meaningful way? Should I practice more intuitive eating? Should I be more intentional with how frequently I am eating and making sure that I am having these like smaller, more mindful protein fiber packed meals through the day? Am I getting enough connection? Am I putting my phone down more? All of these things are impacting your appetite, your need for a potential coping mechanism.
Hi, I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Chaos podcast. Today you have me solo. I have so many good questions from you guys. From this last Ask Me Anything, I am shocked by the diversity of the questions. And I think that I'm just going to have to answer them over the course of literally like a month because they're so good. And there's so many. And so today, what I really decided to do was to divide the questions up into something that kind of encompasses more mental health. And you'll see why when we get into the questions, something that encompasses physical health, and then something that encompasses something a little more personal. So we're going to dive right into the questions, and we're going to start with the mental health. And so the very first question that we got this week was around how to stop overeating at dinner. This person said, I eat until my stomach physically hurts and I am so bloated. Okay. So I know that this is going to be hard to hear. And I know that this is going to be hard to hear because I'm somebody who experienced it myself for a very long time. And overeating, especially at dinner time, comes back to two things for the most part. And I'm not going to say that like there's not that 1% chance that like maybe you have a really, really intense nutritional deficiency. But for the most part, overeating at dinner time, especially when you're saying that it's to the point where you are so bloated that you're in pain. This comes from deprivation. You're restricting way too much throughout the day. And so you're overeating at night. Or you are dealing with so much stress during your day that when you get home and you are unwinding at night, you are using food as a coping mechanism to deal with the stress, anxiety, or emotional issues that you are dealing with. And for me, personally, it was both. And here's what I mean. Back in my 20s, when I was dealing with my eating disorder and it was really, really bad, I obviously wasn't eating. And what I would find is that it was a lot easier for me to not eat during the day. It was really easy for me to go and be busy all day long and keep myself occupied, whether that was at school or during my MBA or at my internship and my job. And then by the time I got home at night, I was starving. I was in a place where anything would sound good because I was so ravenous. This also has an impact on your blood sugar levels, on your glucose stores, on your ghrelin and leptin, which are your hunger and fullness hormones, which I will touch on. But the reality is that deprivation causes you to, one, have your blood sugar dip so low to the point where, again, like anything going in is going to help to raise your stores. But this also has this like emotional and mental component too. So let's talk about it. I think that when we think about this idea of overeating and again, getting overeating so much to the point where you feel physically uncomfortable, it can feel really isolating and it can feel really vulnerable to even admit that in a question box or to yourself. But what I want you to know is that you're not alone, and not just me sharing my experience with this. So many of the women that I work with really have a ton of shame around this because of the fact that eating less, restricting, having only a salad for lunch is something that is truly very glorified in our society, in our culture, by diet culture. And so when we have these moments where even we're like out to dinner and we felt like we ate just a little too much, whether that's like on a date or at a girls' night, and you're comparing it to somebody else, like you feel this sense of shame. And so you're not alone. And the reality is that when you're overeating at night like that, it's actually your body's own protective mechanism. Your body is trying to keep you safe by doing that. It is a response to the restriction, and your body is trying to shift into this place where it can get the calories and the nourishment that it needs. So I think that that kind of can give people a little bit of perspective, maybe even a little bit of hope, and to know that it's your body's not faulty. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body's actually trying to protect you from the restriction that you are really putting it through. And so that is really important. I think what's also important before I talk about these different types of restriction is that your appetite will really fluctuate during the month. And so if you're somebody who's listening to this and you're thinking like, well, when I'm on my period, I definitely eat and have a different appetite or overeat. Or when I'm super stressed, I definitely overeat. If you try to trick your body into eating less than you actually need, you end up overeating later. And so that's why honoring your hunger and fullness cues is so important. And for a lot of people, that means turning off the screens, turning off devices, and eating in a way where you're actually relaxed and in your parasympathetic state. And you have to eat real whole food because that's going to allow you to feel more satisfied and not overeat later on. Like these are just simple little tips that I'm giving you right now. If you're trying to like have a hack, eating more during the day is the hack, right? Because you're giving your body the nourishment it needs before it's too late. And then that binge cycle starts to ensue. So let's talk a little bit about restriction because, again, that's the root cause of overeating and binging. So, when we think about restriction, the first thing anyone is going to really think about is physical restriction, right? Restricting calories, restricting certain foods, whether that is I am going to be vegan, so you're not having a ton of protein, or I am going to be low fat, which is like very, 80s, 90s mentality. My in-laws definitely still vibe with that mentality, or I'm going to be low carb, which is very 2000s. And so many women who I start working with, I actually had a client today who was telling me, my calorie intake right now is only like 1,100 a day. These really low calorie diets that we are taught by diet culture that tell us, go on this diet. One, they are slowing our metabolisms down. Our bodies begin to adapt and think, okay, well, she's only giving me 1,200 calories. She's only giving me 1,100 calories. That's all I need. I don't need to eat more. I'm fine with that. I'm going to adapt to that. I'm going to slow the metabolic rate down to the point where I'm conserving energy. And that is what I am used to getting. So that's what I'm going to burn. But our bodies are really, really smart in that way. They're very, very wise. They're going to adapt to what we are giving it. That said, those 1,100 calorie a day diets are comparable to where undernourished regions of the world are eating, where there is severe hunger that is interfering with people's ability to be healthy, to be mentally clear, to have lots of energy. And most women are doing at least 2 diets like this every single year, right? So one, we're disrupting our metabolic health. We are starving and depriving ourselves of energy, and we are putting ourselves in a state that is actually harming us rather than serving us. But because diet culture tells us, hey, do this juice cleanse, do this diet, restrict this macro, we all think that it's okay. But that physical restriction is absolutely going to cause your body to raise cortisol, to lower thyroid function, to mess with ghrelin and leptin, and to say, hey, we need more food, we need more fuel. And that's when you start overeating. There's also other types of restriction. There's mental restriction, which means you are carrying around all of these different rules around food. Maybe you are saying to yourself, I can't eat pizza. I shouldn't eat pasta. I am a bad person if I'm going to eat this brownie. And you are determining your worth based off of the foods that you're eating. And this type of restriction, again, a lot of people don't necessarily think that they're restricting. They think that they have a really healthy relationship with food, only to recognize when you ask, about judgments that they have around food, like, oh, I can only have a salad for lunch. Okay, you're carrying around some mental restriction if that's how you're thinking. If you're thinking to yourself, like, I can only have pizza on the weekends, that's a mental restriction. And just because you are not physically restricting calories, it doesn't mean that you're not affected by the rules that you have around food. Because when you have that kind of all or nothing mentality or mindset around food, you then start to think, well, if I can only have pizza on the weekends, then I'm gonna eat all the pizza that I can on Saturday because I'm not allowed to have it on Monday. And so you end up overeating it when if you were like mentally giving yourself the permission to have pizza any day of the week, you wouldn't feel like you needed to go balls to the walls on Saturday. So the last type of restriction that I often see in clients is this emotional restriction. And this comes back to this idea of using food as a coping mechanism to deal with stress. And so for a lot of people, what will happen is even if you're not physically restricting food, even if you feel like you don't have all these mental rules around food, if you are chronically stressed out, your body is going into your glycogen stores to you going into these big muscle groups, and it's pulling out sugar through the day to help you deal with stress, right? And so if your body is doing that and it's using up this stored fuel, you are going to need to replenish those stores with some sort of food. And so a lot of people will end up binging at the end of a crazy stressful work day or after a really big fight with someone, especially if this type of stress is chronic. If you have these ignored emotional needs, if you have this issue with rest where you are prioritizing everything else in your life over rest, if you are never in the position where you are allowing yourself to connect with yourself or people you love or your own needs, you are ignoring a very basic part of yourself as a human that needs attention, that causes you to then turn to food as a coping mechanism. And so whatever form of restriction you are dealing with, I think it's a really simplified way to break it down. Like, again, physical, mental, emotional restriction. You have to practice awareness first to understand, okay, am I physically restricting? That's an easy one to say yes or no to, right? We all know if we are on a low calorie diet, if we're tracking our food, if we're putting our macros in a calculator, if we are saying after 7 p.m., I'm not allowed to eat, even if I am hungry, we know if we're physically restricting. So check that one off the box. Do I have rules around food that are technically not necessarily good for me? Meaning I say, oh my gosh, I'm so like quote unquote fat, or I am so quote unquote bad if I eat this food, and I have to make up for it tomorrow by maybe restricting, maybe by exercising, or I just feel this constant shame if I eat this food. That's something to be aware of. Am I emotionally restricting? Am I not giving myself enough connection? Am I not giving myself enough rest? Am I not allowing myself to enjoy life where I'm chronically stressed and overwhelmed all the time? So, checking in with yourself there. And then I think that if you are somebody who is constantly overeating, it's really important to reflect on what was going on for you that day that led up to that overeating experience. So, this is an exercise that I often walk through with clients. Like, think about what led up to that. Is it, were you really stressed? Did you not eat lunch that day? Did you skip breakfast? Did you load up on way too much caffeine? Did you get in a fight with your partner? Go through the motions and ask yourself what happened, right? And invite in that awareness without being judgmental to yourself. Be really curious with yourself about how you were feeling, what your habits were, what your actions were. And then ask yourself, what did I actually need in that moment? Maybe it was food. Maybe you did need more food because you were restricting physically during the day. What were you craving? Were you craving emotional intimacy? Were you craving connection with somebody? Were you actually needing more rest? Because oftentimes, again, we turn to food when we're actually really in need of something else, but food is giving us this quick hit of sugar for energy. It's giving us this quick hit of dopamine. It's giving us this quick hit of happiness versus us actually looking a little bit more inward and saying, what are my real needs? How can I proactively care for myself in a more deeper and more meaningful way? Should I practice more intuitive eating? Should I be more intentional with how frequently I am eating and making sure that I am having these like smaller, more mindful protein fiber packed meals through the day? Am I getting enough connection? Am I putting my phone down more? All of these things are impacting your appetite, your need for a potential coping mechanism, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you create awareness, you start to be able to honor your cravings, to honor your needs in a more deep and meaningful and nourishing way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so I hope that this was helpful for that person, because it's never going to work long term to either eat like this one really big meal a day or to try to restrict all day. And then this is like the time that you give yourself to fuel yourself. Or if you have this like strained relationship with food, or a strained relationship with rest, or a strained relationship with giving yourself the ability and capacity to meet your own needs, all of that stuff needs work, right? And the more awareness you bring to it, the more you can honor those things in a meaningful way. So the next question that I got is that more personal question that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So when we think about relationships, I often don't talk too much about my relationship with Chad anymore, because it was something that when I first started my platform and we were getting married, and that was like a big part of my life, I talked about it all the time. But I figure I act like everyone has been a follower of mine forever, and that's just not the case. So this question is, how did you know Chad was the one? I'm in a 5-year relationship and I'm unsure this person is the one for me. So here is what I will tell you. If you're new here, Chad and I dated in college. And to some degree, I think I subconsciously or unconsciously always knew that Chad was the one, but I had a lot of outside opinions, a lot of voices from friends and family and all these different things that like, go try something new, go date someone new, go see what else is out there in the world. You're moving to New York, you want to date someone else. And at the time, I think that a lot of my friends and family were trying to protect me, were trying to think that maybe they knew what was best for me, because there was, to be totally transparent with you guys, there's a lot of toxicity in my relationship with Chad at the time. We were both really immature. We both really deeply loved each other, but we both also had a lot to work on ourselves. I was dealing with my eating disorder at the time. I was dealing with not really knowing who I was or what I wanted out of life. And he was dealing with his own stuff. And so we broke up and I started dating another guy who lived in New York at the time. Or when I lived in New York, I guess I should say, for about 2.5 years. And the red flag of that situation was that I was always thinking about Chad and or talking to him at points in time during the relationship. So I think that that probably should have shown me right there that like, hey, you're still in love with this person. But if I zoom out and I just talk about that other relationship, right? And the guy that I was dating for those 2.5 years who was about to propose to me when I was living in New York, there was nothing inherently bad or wrong with him or with the relationship. In fact, on paper, he was actually really great. He had a great job. He came from a great family. He was a really nice guy. We never really fought that much. And so for this person who's asking, like, I'm in a 5-year relationship and I'm unsure that this guy is the one, here's what I had to ask myself when I was at a point in the relationship where I knew this guy was going to propose and I knew he was really invested. I had to ask myself, if I stay in this relationship, if I decide to marry this guy, what am I depriving myself of? Because I knew that I was depriving myself of something. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been questioning it. And when I put it to myself that way, I realized that there was so much that was missing, so much that was important to me that I really valued, so much adventure, so much connection, so much chemistry that I knew were all possible because I had that when I dated Chad prior to this other relationship. And maybe you haven't ever dated somebody where you kind of felt that intense chemistry and connection. And that's okay too, because there's part of you that knows that there are things that you value, again, whether it's humor or adventure or deep, meaningful conversations or feeling safe. There are so many different things that we're going to value in a relationship that are different from person to person. But if you feel like you're missing that, or you're missing something and you can't even just put your finger on it, when you feel like you are giving something up on any level, emotionally, physically, depth, chemistry, a need that is not being met, ultimately down the line, you are depriving yourself of something in that relationship. And ultimately, that will become a problem. And you have to ask yourself, are you okay with sacrificing that, whatever that thing is that's missing over the course of your entire life? And again, for me, knowing that with Chad, I had so much laughter. Like, he is my best friend. We have the same sense of humor. We laugh about things until like the middle of the night. It's like that to me, that is something that is so important. That was just not there in this other relationship. We did not laugh. It was a very stale conversation. And I had to ask myself, yeah, he's great on paper, but am I okay with this for the rest of my life? I'd rather be alone than have this for the rest of my life. And it's no knock against him. It's no knock against like that guy as a person. It's just that I wasn't okay with that. And what I will say to you is, not telling you to break up with your 5-year partner, but you should never settle. And you should never stay in a relationship out of fear of like, am I ever going to find someone else? Am I ever going to be able to get married? Am I going to get married too late? Like, all of these things, like, you should be choosing to stay in a relationship from a place of love, not from a place of fear of like never finding someone else or never finding somebody that's, you know, going to be better or that's going to meet all of your requirements. If you're not happy and you feel like you're missing out on something, that's only going to get worse over time. And I definitely found that in the relationship that I had with Chad. And again, it's no knock against that person. It's just a testament to there are some people that you have more chemistry with, and there are some people that you're going to have a deeper sense of connection with. I personally do believe in soulmates and the one, but even if you don't settle for somebody who doesn't feel right or doesn't feel like they're giving you all of the things that you need to have your needs met.
I really hope that you are enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick pause and invite you to come deeper with us if you're ready to explore the root cause connection to the symptoms that you're feeling. Whether you're bloated, exhausted, maybe you have brain fog, you can't lose weight. The WBK Health and Hormones course and our WBK membership and app are here to help you feel like you are empowered to take charge of your health and understand the real why behind you feeling how you do. And we give you the methods and protocols to heal with sustainable solutions. Right now, through Labor Day, get 10% off our annual membership on the WBK app with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS, and 20% off the Wellness by Kelley Health and Hormones course, and an emailed lab review with the code Balancing Chaos 20. That's BALANCINGCHAOS 20. These protocols in the course have meal suggestions, journal prompts, and supplement guides to help you heal whatever area of hormonal balance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content and new workouts, recipes, and meditations every single week to keep you consistent and to allow your body to come back to its most vital state of being. Okay, now back to the episode.
The last question that we are going to talk about today is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And this is the most common cause of low thyroid in women, which is why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. And it is something in terms of like an autoimmune condition and just a condition in general that is 20 times more diagnosed in women than it is in men. And I know that the majority of the people who are listening to this are women. And so let's talk about it. So just in general, when we think about when we think about autoimmune disorders, they involve the immune system producing antibodies that are meant to stop intruders, whether that's a virus or a parasite or whatever, from harming your body. But what they end up doing is attacking your healthy tissue. So in something like Hashimoto's, the body identifies thyroid hormone as a foreign invader. And so it produces these antibodies that attack your thyroid, that cause inflammation, and then basically that cause destruction to the gland over time. Naturally, this is going to negatively impact the functioning of your thyroid gland. Hashimoto's is, like I said, especially in the United States, the most common cause of underactive thyroid or hypothyroidism. And it's not a problem of the thyroid gland itself. It's a condition that stems from overreactions of the entire immune system. And so I think it's really important when someone's asking for tips for Hashimoto's that it's actually treated differently than how you would treat just slow signaling of the brain to the thyroid and like normal hypothyroid. This is more an immune issue, an inflammation issue. And so initially, when you are, it takes a long time for most people to get diagnosed, but when the antibodies on set, you might not have symptoms, but as the attack progresses, as the damaged cells of your thyroid become inefficient at converting thyroid hormone, your thyroid starts to compensate, and that compensation becomes larger and larger, and you start to feel these different symptoms, whether that might be fatigue, depression, you feel kind of cold all of the time, constipation, you have this brittle, thinning hair, chronic fatigue, maybe I'm trying to think of what else. Irregular periods is very common. Heavy menstrual periods, weight gain is really, really common. So it's a lot of the same symptoms of hypothyroid, but again, the root cause is very, very different. And so if you are somebody who doesn't know whether or not you have Hashimoto's or not, you should go to your doctor. And here's the problem. So many doctors, when they run thyroid labs, are just running. I've said this so many times on Instagram, maybe even on my podcast, TSH and free T4. If you want to know whether or not I literally just had a lab review like 2 weeks ago with a client who knew she had a thyroid issue, but she didn't know it was autoimmune. And we ran her thyroid antibodies and they were both elevated. And she's like, oh my God, I have Hashimoto's. I have thyroiditis. Like, it's just insane to me that doctors don't run these tests. But if you think that you potentially could have an autoimmune thyroid condition, maybe your mom had an autoimmune thyroid condition, maybe your dad had one, maybe it's like there's a genetic component, or you feel a variety of these symptoms, get your thyroglobulin and your thyroid paradoxase antibodies tested. The presence of these antibodies will confirm Hashimoto's. So that's really, really important. And then when we think about, I just want to really explain the way the thyroid works so that people have an understanding. Now, when we think about your brain, your hypothalamus, your brain's control center, that control center in your brain is responsible for stimulating the production of two primary thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. When it senses a need for more, it's going to send this message to your pituitary gland, which is your master gland, to release more TSH, telling your thyroid, produce T3 and produce T4. This process does not occur in people suffering from Hashimoto's, and that's due to the insufficient conversion of T4 to T3, the hypothalamus incorrectly communicating with the pituitary gland, or the pituitary gland not responding to the signals of TSH. So, what can we do about this? We are going to go through some tips for this. And I think that what you want to remember is that, fortunately, most of the causes and risk factors that can lead to the development of Hashimoto's can be controlled and prevented through diet and lifestyle. The most important aspect of reversing Hashimoto's is to identify the root cause of why you specifically have developed the condition, and then focus on treating that specific aspect of it, right? And so for some people, it's going to be stress related. For some people, it's going to be gut related. So common causes are leaky gut, like really disordered digestive function, candida, eating a lot of inflammatory foods, having foods that cause allergic reactions, emotional stress, nutrient deficiencies. More risk factors include being a woman, which is something you can't control. Being middle-aged, something you can't control. Having a family history of autoimmune conditions, something you can't control. Experiencing trauma, something you can't control. Stress, you can control. Smoking, can control. Having a history of an eating disorder, to some degree, we can control, right? Pregnancy can be a really strong precursor to developing Hashimoto's, because of the increased activity of the immune system that worsens an autoimmune disease that you may already have. Same thing with menopause, that can also be a trigger. So let's start by talking about the gut. 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. And when your gut is compromised by increased permeability, or as a lot of people call it, leaky gut, your immune system also gets compromised. And in leaky gut, there are these little holes in the intestinal lining that develop and grow, which allow undigested food particles to pass through into your bloodstream. And when these really large food particles enter into your system, your body thinks of them as these foreign invaders, and it starts to attack them, or anything that has a similar molecular structure. And so if the food protein has a similar structure to a protein that makes up an organ, then your body starts to be like mistakenly attack itself, right? And in the case of Hashimoto's, your gut becomes leaky because you're super stressed, you're eating a ton of processed food, which allow these large food particles, including gluten, to leave the gut and travel to the bloodstream. And gluten has a very similar structure to the proteins that make up the thyroid gland. And this results in the body attacking the gluten as well as attacking the thyroid. So anyone with Hashimoto's should absolutely be on an anti-inflammatory and specifically a gluten-free diet to alleviate both the symptoms and to improve thyroid function. This is so, so important. You have to really help heal your gut when you have Hashimoto's. And so consuming foods that are healing for both the small intestine and the large intestine. Things like probiotic rich foods are really great. Not taking a specific probiotic strain, but having foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, fermented vegetables are all really great to help leaky gut and to help increase nutrient absorption. Bone broth is really great because it is a source of L-proline, L-glycine, L-glutamine, and collagen that help repairs the digestive lining and can help improve symptoms of hypothyroidism. You want to be eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. I know I say that all the time for a variety of different conditions, but this should be the majority of your diet if you have Hashimoto's. They are high in a multitude of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidant. And the greater variety of fruits and vegetables that you're consuming, the greater variety of nutrients that you're getting. And so what that's going to do is help one, improve overall digestive health because you're eating more fiber. It's going to help with your hormonal balance. And you just want to make sure that you are buying organic. That's really important when it comes to issues that are hormonal and immune related. Wild caught fish is really great. I know a lot of people don't like fish, but fish is going to provide the omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. And omega-3s are really essential for hormonal balance and thyroid function. So balancing omega-3 fatty acids to omega-6 fatty acids in a 1-to-3 ratio is ideal for reducing inflammation. So you can get things like cold water fish, Atlantic mackerel, Alaskan salmon, sardines, all great things. When it comes to diet, a few other things. Coconut oil is a staple in hypothyroid healing because it has a really high smoke point. It's easy to digest. It nourishes your digestive system. It's antimicrobial. It's a great antioxidant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Seaweed is a really great source of iodine, and iodine is a central element in thyroid hormone. So it plays a really, really important role in overall thyroid functioning. When you think about your water, you want to have filtered water or natural mountain spring water to enhance your digestion, to prevent fatigue, to help with constipation and sugar cravings. All of these things are important when it comes to healing your gut so that you can heal your thyroid. You're going to want to eat selenium-rich foods. So selenium is required for the production of free T3, which is your active form of thyroid hormone. And ensuring that you have adequate levels of selenium in your body can reduce autoimmune effects, especially in Hashimoto's, because the thyroid has the highest selenium content in the body. Selenium helps the thyroid function by improving overall structure of the gland and decreasing antibodies and targeting thyroid proteins. So have some Brazil nuts during the day. Again, wanting to avoid inflammatory foods. So gluten, please make sure you're not eating a ton of gluten or any gluten at all if you can manage it, because like I said, it's got this pro-inflammatory response, especially in people who have a leaky gut. And that's what's causing their thyroid issues. So a lot of people with thyroid issues in general are sensitive to gluten. Gluten is found in wheat, rye, barley. It's also found in alcohol, soy sauce, packaged food. So look at your labels. Conventional dairy is something you also want to take out. Conventional dairy that has been pasteurized and homogenized. Pasteurization is the process of heating up milk to kill pathogens. It damages and denatures proteins and enzymes and nutrients. And it's really hard to digest and it triggers an inflammatory response. And so you really want to ideally try to have some sort of nut milk or some sort of dairy-free alternative, that's not soy, in order to help your thyroid. Sugar is also something you really definitely want to cut out. One of the thyroid's primary functions is hormonal balance and metabolic regulation. And when we have a ton of sugar, sugar disrupts hormonal balance that's necessary for proper metabolic functioning. So sugar should really be avoided entirely. And there are so many alternatives out there, stevia, monk fruit, because you really want to avoid the sugar that's going to impact your metabolic processes when you have Hashimoto's. Same with refined flour. So bread, cereal, pasta. You just want to get your carbohydrates from more whole food sources like potatoes and legumes and rice, things that are much closer to the earth. Now, when we think about supplementation, you want to be really, really careful when you think about thyroid conditions, and you want to always be working with a practitioner, but supplements like ashwagandha can help reduce thyroid issues by enhancing your body's ability to handle stress. And a lot of people, stress is the root cause of the thyroid slowing down and the immune system not being as capable. Turmeric is a really great one because it helps to reduce inflammation. Reishi is really great because it has anti-inflammatory compounds to improve nerve transmissions to the brains and to enhance the endocrine system functioning. Google, so it's spelled Guggul, not Google, has been shown to improve thyroid conversion. These are all really great. And then finally, when we think about lifestyle factors, some tips here are really try to minimize your stress. And that looks different for everyone, right? If meditation works for me, maybe running works for you, maybe saying no and implementing boundaries works for somebody else. You have to think about how you are specifically going to minimize your stress and what your stress is in the first place. You're going to want to throw out as many or all of your chemical-based products and replace them with natural products. So thinking about the ingredient lists of your cosmetics, your body wash, your shampoo, your moisturizer, your deodorant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many natural cosmetic, personal care, home care brands that are available. And it's because of the fact that environmental factors play a role in Hashimoto's. So thinking about getting rid of your toxic products, it's going to make a world of difference in how your hormones are able to function. Birth control. If you are taking the birth control pill, if you have a patch, if you have a hormonal IUD, the synthetic sex hormones have a negative impact on other hormones, including your thyroid, and they disrupt the microflora of your gut, which can lead to leaky gut. So highly recommend just getting off of the birth control pill, doing a natural cycle app or a MyFlow app and tracking it that way if that's available to you. So I hope that this was helpful, especially for all of the women out there that are struggling with thyroid conditions, knowing that you can absolutely manage your thyroid condition with, you may need medication. You may need medication for the rest of your life, but you can absolutely lower the dose or you can improve or alleviate symptoms when you are adding in these lifestyle tools that are helpful. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you liked this episode, rate, review, subscribe to the show, and we will see you next week for our interview episode.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley or head over to our website, wellnessbykelly.com. Sign up now for the Wellness by Kelley 7-day free trial on our app or head over to our course and now get 20% off the course or 10% off of the membership with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review plus protocols built out to help you heal with whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content with our app with low impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones and help you feel like you are living your most beautiful, joyful, and vital life. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review. That is the best way to help the show grow and get to more listeners. We hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next week.